In November 2013, the most intense typhoon in history devastated densely populated and rural areas across the central Philippines. The hardest hit was the Visayas and Mindanao regions, which had already been hit with other major storms. The typhoon destroyed many homes and public infrastructure. It displaced 4 million people. The death toll is estimated to be 6,000 people. The government lacked the ability to respond to basic needs in the affected communities. People, families, and communities are seeking basic needs to survive, such as clean water, nourishing meals, as well as emergency social and medical services. Communities also need long-term rebuilding of critical infrastructure such as shelter and health centers. The National Alliance for Filipino Concerns, NAFCON, an alliance of Filipino organizations and individuals in the United States serving to protect the rights and welfare of Filipinos, is taking action to support victims of the typhoon through Task Force Haiyan. NAFCON is accepting donations to provide support to grassroots organizations who are already on the ground in the Philippines and have been distributing aid and support since the typhoon struck. Through NAFCON and their partner organizations, you can also volunteer for relief and rehabilitation programs and medical and psychosocial missions in the Philippines. As a volunteer for NAFCON, you can help educate individuals, churches, and other organizations in the U.S. on this issue and mobilize for their support. Through this video, you'll learn more about the issues that made the typhoon so devastating, the environmental degradation, the accountability of the Philippine government, and further updates and calls for support.
It's important to understand the environmental issues in the Philippines that existed before Typhoon Haiyan and how they worsened the destruction of the typhoon. Deforestation and its consequences is the most important ecological problem in the Philippines. Because the land has lost so much of its forest, it cannot absorb the rains and wind from storms like Haiyan. This causes massive flooding and landslides. Most of the victims of such flooding are the poor peasants, farm workers, and the urban poor. They live on riverbanks at the foot of mountainous areas and in cramped shanty towns. Areas at the foot of mountains, especially those that are near rivers, are in danger of being buried in mud and logs from the uplands. The Philippine government has no competent plans in place to create decent housing for the thousands of residents living along riverbanks and other endangered areas. Even putting aside the probable effects of global warming, there are very serious problems from the excessive logging and mining that's been going on in the Philippines for centuries. Since the 1960s, U.S. and other foreign corporations and their Philippine partners expanded the mining, logging, fishing, and plantations for export. The extraction is done without considering the ecological balance and the social cost. Less than 1 million hectares of tropical rainforest in the Philippines remain. U.S. and Philippine government policies and corporate operations magnify the negative impacts of natural disasters. Addressing environmental issues in the Philippines like deforestation and mining are vital in minimizing destruction unleashed by these type of storms. One other angle of the super typhoon which many are addressing is the responsibility of first world countries in being the main contributors to greenhouse gases, global warming, and overall climate change. So all of these have to be addressed at home and through multilateral talks with other countries to make real substantive change.
In the days preceding the storm, the government's response was anything but adequate. Thousands of people lacked clean water, food, and shelter. President Benigno Aquino denied that there were problems with the government's relief plan, while international relief workers and aid were stranded in Manila. Instead of having a quick and effective response to the typhoon, the government deployed the military to stop the looting of businesses rather than addressing the needs of the people. In 2012, the Aquino government reduced the budget of disaster preparedness programs and continues to provide slow and weak relief and rehabilitation. The government is also facing scandals regarding corruption and the misappropriation of public funds. The pork barrel scandal exposed the government racket that converted 10 billion pesos in Priority Development Assistance Funds, PDAF, that went into the pockets of corrupt politicians instead of programs meant to build infrastructure and other types of development. There have been claims that local government units were reselling donated relief goods that were sent from abroad. In short, funds that should have been available for relief and rehabilitation were pocketed by corrupt government officials and business people. Imagine if these funds were not stolen. Imagine if they had actually been used to improve infrastructure, train first responders, create effective evacuation programs, and rebuild the nation.
Nearly 3 months after Typhoon Haiyan, the total number of people affected by the calamity so far averages 12.2 million. According to last month's reports, 6,000 people have been confirmed dead, while 4 million people have been displaced. The typhoon has set off landslides, storm surges, flash floods, and destroyed homes and buildings, leaving those in its wake with a tremendous loss of livelihood and security. Many are staying in evacuation centers, makeshift homes, and temporary shelters. Roads and bridges have also been destroyed, leaving several communities completely isolated. Although this picture of the Philippines may seem hopeless, the surge and popularity of grassroots efforts has proven otherwise. Through NAFCON's direct partnership with Bayanihan Alay sa Sambayanan, or BALSA, your contributions so far have helped the people most affected in very real ways. Your contributions have helped with packing distributions, debris cleanup, and urgent medical services for the survivors of the typhoon. In addition, caravans of volunteers from all over the Philippines and other countries have been able to deliver relief boxes with sacks of food, slippers, towels, and hygiene packs. There are several relief operations scheduled to leave in the coming weeks. Relief operations will also be maximized for awareness building on disaster risk reduction. Although relief is now reaching some of the smaller and lesser known communities affected, there is still so much work to do. With the ongoing relief efforts, rehabilitation will be much lengthier and long-lasting. Solidarity relief missions have already begun to assist in administering medical care and assisting communities with psychosocial intervention therapy. More updates in the coming weeks can be found at nafconusa.org.
I've been inspired by the ways that communities, churches, and individuals have rallied together in genuine concern, sending their support to those in the typhoon-stricken areas. I've also been inspired by the way folks have been showing interest in how we can continue to provide short-term relief in addition to supporting long-term relief. After seeing footage of the devastation, increasing evidence of the effects of climate change, and the glaring lack of support by the Philippine government, people are starting to realize how important solidarity is and how effective it has been in providing relief on the ground. As family members of one human race, we must continue to do what we can to provide support, to commit ourselves to healing and wholeness, to make the daily decision to act in life-giving ways. And there are many small things that you can do. You can still support by donating any amounts of money through NAFCON or your trusted agency, by volunteering your time, by being in conversation with others about what's going on in the Philippines, by planning and showing up at events organized to raise funds and awareness, by lifting up your prayers and meditations, by opening your hearts and minds to the stories of the survivors. We must do our part to turn things around, to take responsibility in educating ourselves, to be informed beyond mainstream media. You can join, help plan, or invite others on a Solidarity medical mission trip, to see the recovery efforts firsthand, to meet survivors eye to eye, to offer your presence so that you can build relationships with the survivors. This is solidarity. Take part in sowing seeds of life and liberation where seeds of destruction and neglect were sown. Resurrection is possible. Be an active participant in building something new.